In the Grand Ashworth estate, where secrets whispered through marble corridors and family loyalty was tested behind closed doors, a single missing heirloom would unravel decades of carefully guarded lies. When Lady Catherine Ashworth's precious sapphire ring, a family treasure worth more than most people's homes, vanished without a trace, no one expected the search to expose a web of betrayal that reached the very heart of England's most respected noble family. What began as a simple theft investigation became a shocking revelation that would shake the foundations of the Ashworth legacy forever. Lady Catherine Ashworth stood in the center of her opulent bedroom, her hands trembling as she searched through velvet-lined jewelry boxes for the third time that morning. The sapphire ring, a magnificent piece that had been passed down through 5 generations of Ashworth women, was nowhere to be found. The ring wasn't just valuable, it was irreplaceable, carrying with it the weight of family history and tradition that stretched back to the Victorian era. The Ashworth estate buzzed with its usual morning activity. Servants moved quietly through the corridors, preparing for another day in one of England's most prestigious households. Lord Henry Ashworth, Catherine's husband, had left early for London on business, leaving her alone with their son William and daughter-in-law Eleanor. The couple had moved back to the estate 6 months ago after William's military service ended, bringing with them hopes of continuing the family legacy. Catherine's personal maid, Margaret, had been the first to notice her distress. The elderly woman had served the Ashworth family for over 30 years and knew every piece of jewelry in Catherine's collection by heart. When Catherine mentioned the missing ring, Margaret's face had gone pale. She remembered clearly helping Catherine remove it the previous evening and placing it in its designated spot in the mahogany jewelry box. "My lady, perhaps it simply fell behind the dresser," Margaret suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. They had already moved every piece of furniture, checked every drawer, and examined every inch of the room. The ring had simply vanished. William arrived within minutes of his mother's frantic call. At 32, he possessed the same commanding presence that had made the Ashworth name respected in military and social circles. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. Behind him followed Thomas, the estate's head of security, a former police detective whom Lord Ashworth had hired after a series of break-ins in neighboring estates. "Mother, tell me exactly what happened," William said, his voice calm but concerned. He had inherited his father's methodical approach to problems, a trait that had served him well during his years in the Royal Guards. Catherine explained how she had worn the ring to dinner the previous evening. The family had entertained Lord and Lady Pemberton, old friends who had stayed until nearly midnight. She distinctly remembered removing the ring before bed, as was her nightly routine. Margaret had helped her with her jewelry, as always, and both women were certain the ring had been placed in its proper location. Thomas began his investigation immediately. The estate's security system was comprehensive, with cameras covering all main entrances and motion sensors throughout the ground floor. However, the family quarters on the upper level had always been considered private space, with minimal electronic surveillance. It was a decision that now seemed like a costly oversight. As Thomas reviewed the footage, he noted several concerning details. The cameras showed the Pembertons leaving at 11:47 p.m., with Lord Ashworth escorting them to their car. The household staff had finished their duties by midnight, and the main doors had been secured. Yet there were gaps in coverage, service corridors, and back staircases that could provide access to the upper floors without detection. Eleanor, William's wife, joined the search efforts with obvious concern. She had married into the Ashworth family 18 months earlier, and, despite her warm personality and genuine affection for Catherine, she remained somewhat of an outsider to the family's long-established traditions. The missing ring represented more than monetary value, it symbolized acceptance and belonging within the Ashworth lineage. Could it have been misplaced somewhere else in the house? Eleanor suggested. Perhaps Catherine wore it to the library or the conservatory yesterday afternoon? Catherine shook her head firmly. "I never remove family jewelry outside my bedroom. It's a rule I've followed for 40 years. Her voice carried the weight of aristocratic tradition and personal discipline that had defined her life. The household staff was questioned discreetly. Each member had been with the family for years, some for decades. Their loyalty was unquestioned, their backgrounds thoroughly vetted. Yet someone had to be responsible for the ring's disappearance. The alternative, that an outsider had infiltrated their secure home, was almost too disturbing to consider. Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper, provided detailed accounts of the previous evening's activities. The dinner service had proceeded normally, with the usual complement of serving staff attending to the guests. The kitchen had been cleaned and secured by 11 p.m., and all staff had departed by their usual times. Nothing had seemed out of the ordinary. As the investigation continued into the afternoon, tension began to mount throughout the estate. The missing ring had become more than a simple theft, it had become a violation of the family's sense of security and trust. Generations of Ashworth women had worn that ring with pride, and its disappearance felt like an assault on their heritage. William found himself torn between his loyalty to his family and his training as an investigator. His military experience had taught him to approach problems systematically, to consider all possibilities without prejudice. Yet this was his family home, his mother's treasure, and the suspects were people he had known his entire life. Thomas's investigation revealed one troubling detail: the security cameras in the main corridor had experienced a brief malfunction between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., displaying only static for approximately 47 minutes. The timing seemed too convenient to be coincidental, suggesting that someone with knowledge of the security system might be involved. As evening approached, the family gathered in Lord Ashworth's study to discuss the situation. The room, lined with leather-bound books and family portraits, had witnessed countless important conversations throughout the estate's history. Now it would host another crucial discussion that would determine the family's next steps. Catherine sat in her husband's chair, her usually perfect composure beginning to crack. The ring represented more than jewelry to her, it was a tangible connection to generations of strong Ashworth women who had faced their own challenges with dignity and grace. Its loss felt like a failure of her responsibility as the family's matriarch. William presented Thomas's findings with military precision. The evidence suggested an inside job, someone familiar with the house's layout, the security system, and the family's routines. The camera malfunction indicated premeditation and technical knowledge. Most disturbing was the fact that whoever took the ring had access to Catherine's private quarters, a violation that struck at the heart of their sense of safety. Eleanor listened to the discussion with growing unease. As the newest member of the family, she felt the weight of suspicious glances and unspoken questions. Her presence in the house during the time of the theft, combined with her outsider status, made her an obvious person of interest despite the family's public support. The decision was made to expand the investigation. Thomas would bring in additional security experts and consider involving the local police if necessary. The household staff would be interviewed more thoroughly, and a detailed inventory of all valuable items would be conducted to ensure nothing else was missing. As night fell over the Ashworth estate, the missing ring had transformed a place of security and tradition into a house filled with suspicion and doubt. The family's faith in their protected world had been shaken, and relationships that had seemed solid were now viewed through the lens of potential betrayal. Catherine retired to her bedroom, but sleep would not come easily. Every shadow seemed to hold secrets, every sound suggested hidden movements. The ring's disappearance had opened wounds deeper than mere theft. It had exposed the fragility of trust and the vulnerability that existed even within the most secure environments. Margaret, faithful as always, stayed close to her mistress throughout the long night. The elderly maid had seen the family through many challenges over the years, but this felt different. The violation of Catherine's private space represented a breach of the sacred trust that had always existed between the family and their staff. In his own room, William stared out at the estate grounds, his mind racing through possibilities and suspects. His training told him that the theft was likely committed by someone close to the family, someone who understood their routines and had access to their private areas. The thought that a trusted individual could betray them was almost too painful to accept. Thomas worked through the night, analyzing security footage and examining physical evidence. His professional instincts told him that this case would prove more complex than a simple theft. The careful planning and inside knowledge required suggested deeper motivations than mere greed. Eleanor lay awake beside her husband, aware of the subtle shift in atmosphere that surrounded her. While no one had directly accused her, she could feel the weight of suspicion settling around her like a suffocating blanket. Her love for William and respect for his family were genuine, but she wondered if that would be enough to protect her from doubt and accusation. The Ashworth estate, once a symbol of stability and tradition, had become a place where secrets lurked in shadows and trust was a luxury that could no longer be afforded. The missing ring had set in motion a chain of events that would test every relationship and reveal truths that had been carefully hidden for years. As dawn approached, one thing was certain: the search for Catherine's ring would uncover far more than anyone expected, and the Ashworth family would never be the same again. The second day of the investigation brought with it a tension that seemed to permeate every corner of the Ashworth estate. Lord Henry returned from London earlier than expected, his face grave as William briefed him on the situation. The family patriarch's presence added weight to the investigation, but also increased the pressure for quick resolution. Thomas had worked through the night, and his findings painted a troubling picture. The security system malfunction had been no accident. Someone had deliberately disabled specific cameras using a technique that required both technical knowledge and physical access to the system's main control panel. This discovery narrowed the field of suspects dramatically, as only a handful of people knew the location and access codes for the security infrastructure. The household staff was interviewed again, this time with more pointed questions. Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper, revealed that she had noticed Eleanor wandering the corridors late at night on several occasions over the past month. While this wasn't necessarily unusual for someone adjusting to life in the large estate, the timing now seemed significant. James Morrison, the estate's maintenance supervisor, became a person of particular interest. He had been responsible for installing and maintaining the security system, giving him intimate knowledge of its vulnerabilities. However, James had been with the family for 15 years and had never given cause for suspicion. His shock at being questioned was genuine, but Thomas had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving. Eleanor found herself increasingly isolated as whispered conversations stopped when she entered rooms. The servants, once warm and welcoming, now regarded her with barely concealed suspicion. Even Margaret, usually kind to everyone in the household, seemed to watch Eleanor's movements with newfound scrutiny. Catherine's distress deepened as she realized the investigation was tearing apart the carefully maintained harmony of her household. The ring's value was significant, but the cost of its disappearance was proving far greater than any monetary amount. Trust, once broken, would be nearly impossible to restore completely. William struggled with his dual role as son and investigator. His love for his mother demanded that he pursue every lead aggressively, but his affection for his wife made him reluctant to accept the growing evidence that pointed in her direction. The conflict between loyalty and logic created an internal tension that affected his judgment and objectivity. During a private meeting in Lord Ashworth's study, Thomas presented his preliminary conclusions. The theft had been planned and executed by someone with intimate knowledge of the house, access to the security system, and familiarity with Catherine's routines. The list of people meeting these criteria was disturbingly short. "I understand this is difficult, my lord," Thomas said carefully, "but we cannot ignore the evidence." Lady Eleanor had both opportunity and access. Her recent arrival in the household, combined with the timing of these late-night wanderings, creates a pattern that's hard to dismiss. Lord Ashworth's face remained impassive, but his hands gripped the arms of his chair tightly. "Eleanor is family now," he said finally. "We cannot condemn her based on circumstantial evidence alone." "Of course not," Thomas agreed. "But we also cannot ignore facts in favor of sentiment. The ring didn't disappear on its own." William was present for this conversation, and the weight of suspicion falling on his wife created a crisis of loyalty that threatened to tear him apart. He had sworn to protect his family, but which part of his family deserved that protection? His mother, who had been violated by theft, or his wife, who was being accused without concrete proof? Meanwhile, Eleanor decided to take matters into her own hands. She had noticed the suspicious glances and whispered conversations, and she understood that her position in the family was becoming increasingly precarious. Rather than wait passively for accusations to solidify, she chose to conduct her own investigation. Eleanor's amateur detective work led her to discover several interesting details that had been overlooked. She found that the security system's technical manual was missing from the library where it was usually kept. She also noticed that several valuable items in the guest quarters had been repositioned recently, suggesting someone had been searching through those rooms as well. Her investigation took her to areas of the estate she had never explored fully. The servants' quarters, the storage areas, and the utility rooms all held potential clues. It was during this exploration that Eleanor made a discovery that would change the direction of the entire investigation. In a storage room in the basement, Eleanor found evidence that someone had been living there temporarily. A sleeping bag, food supplies, and personal items suggested that an unauthorized person had been hiding in the estate for an extended period. This discovery contradicted the assumption that the theft was an inside job involving regular household members. When Eleanor reported her findings to Thomas and the family, the revelation shifted the investigation dramatically. The idea that a stranger had infiltrated their secure home was both terrifying and, paradoxically, somewhat reassuring. It meant that the betrayal might not have come from within their trusted circle after all. Thomas immediately expanded his investigation to include the possibility of an external intruder. The storage room was examined for fingerprints, DNA evidence, and any clues about the identity of the unauthorized occupant. The security footage was reviewed again, this time looking for any signs of forced entry or unusual activity in areas previously considered secure. The household staff was questioned about any strangers they might have noticed in the area, unusual sounds or sights, or any other anomalies that might have been dismissed as insignificant at the time. Several interesting details emerged from these expanded interviews. Sarah, one of the housemaids, remembered seeing a maintenance van parked near the estate service entrance several times over the past month. She had assumed it was related to ongoing repair work, but now realized that no such work had been scheduled. The van's presence had become so routine that she had stopped noticing it, exactly what an intruder would want. The gardener, Robert, reported finding gates left open that he was certain he had secured the previous evening. Again, these incidents had seemed minor at the time but now took on greater significance in light of the discovery in the storage room. Thomas's investigation of the storage room revealed professional-level preparation. The intruder had been careful to leave minimal evidence and had clearly studied the estate's routines and security measures extensively. This was not a random break-in but a carefully planned operation by someone with significant resources and knowledge. The technical sophistication required to disable the security cameras suggested that the intruder had inside information or had conducted extensive surveillance before attempting the theft. The question became whether this person had acted alone or had assistance from someone within the household. Eleanor's vindication brought relief but also new concerns. If an outsider had infiltrated their home and lived undetected for weeks or months, the family's sense of security was more severely compromised than anyone had realized. The estate that had seemed like a fortress was revealed to be far more vulnerable than they had believed. Catherine struggled to process this revelation. The idea that a stranger had been living in her home, watching her family, and planning the theft of her most precious possession was deeply disturbing. The violation felt even more severe than if the theft had been committed by someone they knew. William found himself torn between relief that his wife had been cleared of suspicion and anger that their home had been so thoroughly compromised. His military training made him acutely aware of the security failures that had allowed this situation to develop. The family's trust in their protection had been fundamentally shaken. Lord Ashworth called for a complete security review and upgrade. The current system, which had seemed adequate, was clearly insufficient against a determined and sophisticated intruder. The cost of improved security would be substantial, but the alternative, continued vulnerability, was unacceptable. The investigation now focused on identifying the intruder and determining how the theft had been carried out. The ring's disappearance remained a mystery, but the discovery of the unauthorized occupant provided the first real lead in the case. Thomas expanded his team and brought in additional experts to analyze the evidence from the storage room. Meanwhile, the household began to return to a somewhat normal routine, though the underlying tension remained. Trust between family members was slowly being restored, but the knowledge that their home had been violated by a stranger created a new kind of anxiety that would take time to overcome. Eleanor's role in discovering the truth had earned her respect and gratitude from the family, particularly from Catherine, who publicly apologized for any doubts she might have harbored. However, the incident had revealed the fragility of Eleanor's position within the family structure and the speed with which suspicion could arise. As the second day of the investigation concluded, the Ashworth family faced a new reality. Their home was no longer the safe haven they had believed it to be, and the theft of Catherine's ring had exposed vulnerabilities that extended far beyond their security system. The search for the truth was far from over, and the discoveries yet to come would prove even more shocking than what they had already learned. The estate that evening felt different, more vigilant, more suspicious, but also more united as the family began to understand that the real enemy might not be among them but, rather, someone who had been watching them from the shadows, planning and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The third day brought unexpected developments that would forever alter the Ashworth family's understanding of recent events. Thomas's expanded team had worked through the night analyzing evidence from the storage room, and their discoveries painted a picture far more complex than anyone had anticipated. The intruder's identity began to emerge through painstaking detective work. Fingerprint analysis revealed matches in criminal databases, identifying the unauthorized occupant as Marcus Webb, a professional thief with a specialization in high-value jewelry and artwork. Webb's criminal history showed a pattern of infiltrating wealthy households by posing as service workers or contractors, allowing him to study his targets before striking. What shocked the investigators most was the sophisticated nature of Webb's operation. The storage room had been equipped with monitoring equipment that allowed him to observe the family's routines and conversations. Hidden cameras and listening devices had been positioned throughout the estate, giving Webb unprecedented access to private information that would have made the theft much easier to plan and execute. Thomas discovered that Webb had been masquerading as an employee of various legitimate service companies, using fake credentials and references to gain access to the estate over several months. The maintenance van that Sarah had noticed belonged to a front company Webb had established for exactly this purpose. His preparation had been meticulous and professional. But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. Analysis of Webb's equipment revealed recorded conversations and activities spanning the past 6 months, indicating that the Ashworth family had been under comprehensive surveillance for far longer than anyone had realized. Their most private moments had been monitored, their routines catalogued, and their vulnerabilities mapped with scientific precision. Eleanor's vindication was complete, but the family's sense of violation was overwhelming. Catherine struggled to comprehend that her private conversations with Margaret, her intimate moments with her husband, and her family discussions had all been recorded by a criminal who had been living in her basement. The theft of the ring seemed almost secondary to this massive invasion of privacy. William's military background made him particularly sensitive to the security implications. Webb's operation had been sophisticated enough to compromise a military installation, let alone a private residence. The level of planning and resources involved suggested that Webb had been working with significant backing, possibly as part of a larger criminal organization. Lord Ashworth's investigation into Webb's background revealed connections to an international network of thieves who specialized in targeting wealthy families. The Ashworth estate had been selected not just for Catherine's ring, but as part of a broader assessment of valuable items and potential future targets. The family's entire collection was at risk. Thomas's team discovered that Webb had maintained detailed files on each family member, including their schedules, habits, and potential weaknesses. These files revealed an intimate knowledge of the household that was both impressive and deeply disturbing. Webb had known exactly when Catherine would be alone, when the security system would be most vulnerable, and how to access her private quarters without detection. The search for Catherine's ring took on new urgency as investigators realized that Webb's operation might have been part of a larger heist plan. If the ring was being sold through international channels, recovering it would become exponentially more difficult with each passing day. Thomas coordinated with law enforcement agencies across Europe to track potential buyers and known associates of Webb. Meanwhile, the family struggled to adjust to the knowledge that their privacy had been so thoroughly compromised. Catherine found herself unable to feel comfortable in her own bedroom, knowing that Webb had watched her most private moments. The sense of violation extended far beyond the theft of material possessions to encompass her very sense of self and security. Eleanor's experience during the investigation had been traumatic, but it also strengthened her relationship with the family. Her initiative in discovering the storage room had proven her loyalty and intelligence, earning her a respect that might have taken years to develop under normal circumstances. However, she also struggled with the knowledge that Webb had been observing her adjustment to married life and her integration into the Ashworth family. William found himself caught between his desire for justice and his need to protect his family from further trauma. The knowledge that Webb had recorded their private moments created a new kind of vulnerability that traditional security measures couldn't address. How do you protect your family from someone who already knows your most intimate secrets? The investigation revealed that Webb had been preparing for the theft for months, studying not just the physical layout of the estate but the emotional and psychological patterns of its inhabitants. He had known that Catherine treasured the sapphire ring above all her other jewelry, making it the perfect target for both its material value and the psychological impact its loss would create. Thomas's analysis of Webb's escape route showed professional-level planning. The thief had prepared multiple exit strategies, complete with backup transportation and safe houses. His disappearance from the estate had been executed flawlessly, leaving minimal evidence of his departure. The fact that he had managed to disable the security cameras during his escape demonstrated his thorough understanding of the system's vulnerabilities. The family's sense of security, already shattered by the theft, was further undermined by the realization that Webb might still be monitoring them through devices they hadn't yet discovered. Thomas ordered a comprehensive sweep of the entire estate, using advanced detection equipment to locate any remaining surveillance devices. Catherine's emotional state deteriorated as the full scope of the violation became clear. The woman who had always been the pillar of strength for her family found herself questioning every aspect of her life and relationships. Had Webb been listening when she shared her deepest fears with her husband? Had he recorded her private conversations with William about family concerns and future plans? The discovery of Webb's surveillance operation also raised questions about potential accomplices. The sophistication of his setup suggested resources and knowledge that might have required inside assistance. While Eleanor had been cleared of direct involvement in the theft, the possibility remained that Webb had recruited help from within the household or the broader community. Lord Ashworth's business interests came under scrutiny as investigators tried to understand why the family had been specifically targeted. While the Ashworth estate was certainly wealthy, there were many other potential targets in the region. Webb's choice of their family suggested either random selection or specific knowledge that made them particularly attractive as victims. The psychological impact of Webb's surveillance extended to the household staff, who realized that their own privacy had been violated as well. Margaret, in particular, struggled with the knowledge that her decades of loyal service had been observed and recorded by a criminal who had been evaluating the household for weaknesses and opportunities. Thomas's investigation revealed that Webb had maintained contact with criminal networks throughout Europe, suggesting that Catherine's ring might already be in the process of being sold or transported out of the country. The window for recovery was rapidly closing, adding pressure to an investigation that was already emotionally and psychologically draining for everyone involved. As the third day concluded, the Ashworth family faced a new reality that was far more complex and threatening than they had initially understood. The theft of Catherine's ring had been just one element of a comprehensive criminal operation that had violated their privacy, compromised their security, and left them vulnerable to future attacks. The search for justice was becoming a race against time, with stakes that extended far beyond the recovery of a single piece of jewelry. The estate that had once represented safety and tradition now felt like a crime scene, tainted by the knowledge of Webb's presence and surveillance. The family's journey toward healing and recovery would be long and difficult, but their determination to find the truth and recover Catherine's ring remained unshaken. The investigation was entering its most critical phase, and the discoveries that lay ahead would test the family's strength and unity in ways they had never imagined. The fourth day of the investigation brought breakthrough moments that would finally lead to answers, though not in the way anyone expected. Thomas's team had been working around the clock, and their persistence was about to pay off in dramatic fashion. The comprehensive sweep of the estate for additional surveillance devices yielded disturbing results. Webb had been even more thorough than initially believed, with monitoring equipment hidden throughout the house, including in areas the family had considered completely private. The master bedroom, Lord Ashworth's study, and even the private dining room had been compromised. More importantly, the technical analysis of Webb's equipment revealed that he had been receiving and transmitting data in real time. This discovery meant that Webb's criminal associates knew the current status of the investigation and could be taking steps to move Catherine's ring beyond recovery. The race against time became even more urgent. Thomas coordinated with international law enforcement agencies, sharing intelligence about Webb's network and known associates. The response was immediate and comprehensive, with simultaneous raids being planned across multiple countries. The criminal organization that had targeted the Ashworths was larger and more sophisticated than anyone had initially realized. Meanwhile, Eleanor's continued investigation of the estate led to another crucial discovery. While exploring areas of the house she had never fully examined, she found evidence of Webb's presence in locations that challenged the investigators' assumptions about his movements and activities. Hidden compartments in the walls suggested that Webb had been preparing for a much larger theft than just Catherine's ring. The family's art collection, silverware, and other valuable items had all been catalogued by Webb, with detailed notes about their value and portability. Catherine's ring appeared to have been just the first item in what would have been a systematic looting of the estate's most precious possessions. The theft had been interrupted or accelerated for reasons that were not yet clear. William's military contacts proved valuable in understanding the technical aspects of Webb's surveillance operation. The equipment found in the storage room was military grade, suggesting either black market acquisition or connections to corrupt individuals within security services. This revelation elevated the investigation to a national security level, bringing additional resources but also greater urgency. Catherine struggled with the knowledge that Webb had been planning to steal items that represented generations of family history. The sapphire ring was precious, but the thought that Webb had been evaluating family portraits, antique furniture, and irreplaceable heirlooms created a new level of violation that went beyond personal possessions to attack the family's very identity. The psychological profile that emerged of Marcus Webb painted a picture of a highly intelligent and methodical criminal who took personal satisfaction in violating the privacy and security of wealthy families. His surveillance operation appeared to be motivated by more than just monetary gain. There was an element of psychological dominance and control that made his crimes particularly disturbing. Thomas's investigation revealed that Webb had been targeting other wealthy families in the region using similar methods. The Ashworths were not his first victims, and they would not have been his last if his operation had continued. The scope of his criminal enterprise suggested a level of organization and resources that required significant backing and planning. The breakthrough came when analysis of Webb's digital communications revealed a planned meeting with a buyer for Catherine's ring. The transaction was scheduled to take place in London within 48 hours, giving investigators a narrow window to intercept the sale and apprehend both Webb and his criminal associates. Lord Ashworth's connections in London proved crucial in coordinating the operation to recover the ring. His business relationships and social network provided access to information and resources that complemented the official investigation. The recovery effort would require precise timing and coordination between multiple law enforcement agencies. Catherine's emotional state improved significantly with the news that her ring might be recoverable. The possibility of returning the family heirloom to its rightful place provided hope that had been absent since the theft was discovered. However, the knowledge of Webb's broader criminal plans continued to disturb her deeply. Eleanor's role in the investigation had evolved from suspected criminal to valuable investigator. Her fresh perspective and determination to prove her innocence had led to crucial discoveries that professional investigators had missed. Her contributions had not only cleared her name but had also strengthened her position within the Ashworth family structure. William found himself torn between his desire to participate directly in Webb's apprehension and his responsibility to protect his family from further trauma. The military training that had served him well in analyzing the situation also made him acutely aware of the dangers involved in confronting professional criminals with significant resources and international connections. The household staff, while relieved to learn that the theft had been committed by an outsider, struggled with the knowledge that their own activities had been monitored and recorded. The violation of their privacy, combined with the suspicion they had faced during the investigation, created lasting trauma that would affect their relationship with the family for years to come. Thomas coordinated with Metropolitan Police in London to prepare for the interception of Webb's transaction. The operation would need to be carefully planned to ensure both the recovery of the ring and the apprehension of as many criminals as possible. The goal was not just to solve the Ashworth case but to dismantle the entire network that had been targeting wealthy families. The technical evidence gathered from Webb's surveillance equipment provided insights into the methods used by international theft rings to target and victimize wealthy individuals. This information would be valuable in preventing future crimes and protecting other potential victims from experiencing the violation and trauma that the Ashworth family had endured. As preparations for the London operation intensified, the family faced the possibility that their ordeal might finally be coming to an end. However, they also understood that the psychological scars from Webb's surveillance and the theft of Catherine's ring would take much longer to heal than the time required to recover stolen property. The investigation had revealed vulnerabilities in their security and their assumptions about safety that would need to be addressed comprehensively. The estate that had seemed like a fortress had been penetrated by a criminal who had lived among them for months, watching and planning his attack on their most precious possessions. Catherine's ring had become more than just a piece of jewelry, it had become a symbol of the family's resilience and determination to seek justice. Its recovery would represent not just the return of a valuable item but the restoration of the family's sense of security and control over their own lives. The fourth day concluded with a mixture of hope and anxiety. The investigation was approaching its climax, with the possibility of recovering Catherine's ring and apprehending Webb within reach. However, the family also understood that their lives had been permanently changed by this experience, and that the sense of safety they had once taken for granted might never be fully restored. Thomas and his team prepared for what they hoped would be the final phase of the investigation, knowing that success would require precise coordination and a significant element of luck. The stakes were high, and failure would mean not only the permanent loss of Catherine's ring but also the escape of criminals who had violated the Ashworth family in the most intimate and disturbing ways possible. The fifth and final day of the investigation would bring resolution, though not without significant drama and unexpected revelations. The London operation had been planned with military precision, involving multiple law enforcement agencies and requiring split-second timing to succeed. Thomas had coordinated with Metropolitan Police Detective Inspector Sarah Collins, a specialist in art and jewelry theft who had been tracking Webb's network for over 2 years. The planned transaction was set to take place in an upscale hotel in Mayfair, chosen by Webb for its high-security environment and the ability to blend in among wealthy international guests. The Ashworth family remained at the estate during the operation, though William had insisted on being kept informed of every development. Catherine found herself unable to concentrate on anything except the possibility that her precious ring might be returned. The sapphire heirloom had become more than jewelry, it represented the restoration of her family's violated sense of security and dignity. Eleanor had volunteered to travel to London to identify the ring if it was recovered, but Thomas and Lord Ashworth had insisted that she remain at the estate for safety reasons. Webb's criminal network had demonstrated sophisticated surveillance capabilities, and there was no guarantee that they weren't continuing to monitor the family's activities even after Webb's departure from the estate. The operation began at dawn with surveillance teams positioning themselves around the hotel and the surrounding area. Webb was expected to arrive first, followed by the buyer, a man known to authorities only as the collector, who specialized in acquiring stolen jewelry for private clients who asked no questions about provenance. Detective Inspector Collins had prepared for this moment carefully, coordinating with hotel security to gain access to monitoring systems and positioning undercover officers throughout the building. The goal was to allow the transaction to proceed far enough to gather evidence while ensuring that Catherine's ring could be recovered and the criminals apprehended. At the estate, the family gathered in Lord Ashworth's study to await news from London. The room that had witnessed the beginning of the investigation would now serve as the command center for its conclusion. Margaret had prepared tea and refreshments, though no one had much appetite given the tension of the moment. Thomas remained in constant communication with the London operation, providing real-time updates to the family as events unfolded. The first report came at 8:30 a.m. Webb had arrived at the hotel and was proceeding to the designated meeting location. His appearance matched the description developed during the investigation, and surveillance confirmed that he was carrying a small package that likely contained Catherine's ring. Catherine's hands trembled as she heard this news. The thought that her precious family heirloom was so close to being recovered, yet still in the hands of the criminal who had violated her home and privacy, created a mixture of hope and anxiety that was almost unbearable. The next critical moment came when the collector arrived at the hotel. The man appeared to be in his 60s, well-dressed and carrying himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to expensive surroundings. His identity remained unknown to authorities, but his presence confirmed that the transaction was proceeding as planned. William found himself pacing the study as updates continued to arrive from London. His military training had prepared him for tense situations, but waiting passively while others conducted the operation went against every instinct he had developed during his years of service. He wanted to be in London, participating directly in the effort to recover his mother's ring and apprehend the criminals who had violated his family. The breakthrough moment came when surveillance confirmed that Webb had removed a small jewelry box from his package and was showing its contents to the collector. Even through distant camera angles, the distinctive sapphire and diamond setting of Catherine's ring was clearly visible. The family heirloom that had been missing for 4 days was finally within sight of recovery. Catherine gasped audibly when Thomas confirmed that her ring had been positively identified. The relief she felt was overwhelming, though it was tempered by the knowledge that Webb still possessed the ring and could potentially escape if the operation failed. Years of family history hung in the balance of the next few minutes. Detective Inspector Collins made the decision to move when the financial transaction between Webb and the collector was completed. This timing would provide maximum evidence of the crime while ensuring that both criminals could be apprehended with the stolen property in their possession. The coordination had to be perfect to prevent either man from escaping or destroying evidence. The arrest went smoothly, with undercover officers moving simultaneously to apprehend both Webb and the collector before either could react. Webb's attempted escape was quickly thwarted, and the jewelry box containing Catherine's ring was secured as evidence before he could dispose of it. The operation that had taken months to plan was completed in less than 2 minutes. Thomas's immediate call to the estate with news of the successful arrests and recovery of the ring was met with celebration and relief. Catherine broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the knowledge that her family's precious heirloom would be returned to its rightful place. Lord Ashworth embraced his wife, sharing her relief and gratitude for the dedication of the investigators who had made recovery possible. Eleanor felt vindicated not just by the clearing of her name, but by the knowledge that her contributions to the investigation had been crucial in achieving this successful conclusion. Her determination to prove her innocence had led to discoveries that might otherwise have been missed, and her loyalty to the Ashworth family had been demonstrated beyond any doubt. William's relief was tempered by anger at the violation his family had endured. While the ring's recovery was certainly cause for celebration, the knowledge that Webb had been living in their home, recording their private moments, and planning to steal irreplaceable family treasures would take much longer to process and overcome. The investigation's conclusion brought additional revelations as Webb and the collector were interrogated by London authorities. Webb's criminal network was larger than initially suspected, with connections to theft rings operating across Europe and beyond. The Ashworth case had provided the breakthrough needed to begin dismantling an organization that had been targeting wealthy families for years. Catherine's ring was returned to the estate within 24 hours of Webb's arrest, transported by Thomas himself in recognition of its importance to the family. The moment when Catherine held the sapphire heirloom once again was emotional for everyone present, representing not just the recovery of valuable property but the restoration of family heritage and dignity. The sapphire ring's return also marked the beginning of a new chapter for the Ashworth family. The experience had tested their relationships, revealed their vulnerabilities, and forced them to confront the reality that their wealth and status made them targets for sophisticated criminals. However, it had also demonstrated their resilience, loyalty, and determination to protect what was most important to them. Eleanor's integration into the family was complete in ways that might have taken years under normal circumstances. Her courage during the investigation and her contributions to solving the case had earned her a respect and acceptance that went far beyond her role as William's wife. She had proven herself to be a true member of the Ashworth family when it mattered most. The household staff's loyalty had also been tested and proven during the investigation. While they had faced suspicion and questioning, their dedication to the family had never wavered. Margaret, in particular, had provided emotional support to Catherine during the most difficult moments, demonstrating the deep bonds that existed between the family and those who served them. Thomas's investigation had exceeded all expectations, not only recovering Catherine's ring but also dismantling a criminal network that had been operating with impunity for years. His methodical approach and refusal to accept easy answers had been crucial in achieving justice for the Ashworth family and preventing future crimes against other victims. The estate's security was completely overhauled following Webb's arrest, with new systems and procedures designed to prevent any future infiltration. However, the family understood that true security would require more than technological solutions. It would require constant vigilance and a recognition that their wealth and prominence would always make them potential targets. Catherine's ring resumed its place in the family jewelry collection, but its significance had been forever changed by the experience of its theft and recovery. The sapphire heirloom now represented not just family tradition but also the strength and determination that had enabled its recovery. Future generations of Ashworth women would inherit not only a beautiful piece of jewelry but also the story of how it was lost and found again through courage and perseverance. The investigation's conclusion brought closure to a traumatic chapter in the Ashworth family's history, but it also marked the beginning of a period of healing and adjustment. The violations they had endured would leave lasting scars, but their successful response to crisis had strengthened their bonds and their resolve to protect what was most precious to them. As peace returned to the estate, the family reflected on the lessons learned during their ordeal. Trust, once broken, could be restored through time and effort. Security, once compromised, could be rebuilt with better knowledge and resources. And family bonds, once tested by crisis, could emerge stronger than ever if they were founded on genuine love and loyalty. Catherine wore her sapphire ring that evening with a mixture of joy and reflection, grateful for its return but mindful of the price that had been paid for its recovery. The investigation had ended successfully, but the journey toward complete healing would continue for years to come. The Ashworth family had survived their greatest crisis and emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before.